They remembered the cake, the flowers, even the gluten-free options. But they forgot to invite me. I stared at my monitor, the morning blur still clinging to my thoughts. My calendar was color-coded with surgical precision: blue for investor calls, red for internal reviews, green for anything personal. I'd tagged March 14th weeks ago with a gentle yellow mom's birthday. It was a Tuesday. A forgettable day for most, unless you'd grown up counting down to Joanna Monroe's birthday like it was a national holiday. Back then, she would wear her favorite shade of coral and laugh a little louder. Even now, the scent of her lilac perfume haunted the space between memories I didn't ask for. The inbox was stacked: board notes, revised pitch decks, 2 executive referrals. I skimmed through, then typed Joanna into the search bar, expecting maybe an evite or even a passive-aggressive. Thought you might be busy, but we're having cake. Nothing. Not even a typo. I sipped my coffee, letting the bitterness bite. A part of me wanted to believe it was an oversight, an honest mistake. But that part had grown quieter over the years, strangled by small exclusions. The last reunion where Kayla said, "It's just cousins," when I asked about the venue. The group photo with me cropped out. The inside jokes passed like a bottle at Thanksgiving, while I played the polite stranger. They'd once called me too serious for family fun. That label stuck like sap, impossible to scrape off without losing skin. Out of formality or maybe masochism, I called Kayla. "Hey, sis." Her voice lilted too brightly. "You okay?" "Quick question," I said, keeping it casual. "Anything happening?" Thursday. Silence. Then a nervous laugh. "Thursday. You mean work stuff? I mean Mom's birthday." More silence. This time, heavier. "Oh, right. No big plans?" she said, drawing out the words. "Just keeping it simple this year." I didn't press. Instead, I thanked her and hung up, letting her cowardice echo in the void. 15 minutes later, Natalie, my executive assistant, walked in, tablet in hand. "Do you still want that floral arrangement sent to your mom's place? The address in Bellevue?" I blinked. "What?" "For the party," she added like it was obvious. "You usually do something through the family fund." I asked her to pull the booking. She hesitated, but complied. "Looks like they've already ordered a full-service flowers catering, a pianist. Booked last week. Paid through the CoreLink Family Outreach account. The memo says, private Monroe event." My blood cooled instantly. That account had been my idea. A philanthropic branch to support employees' family occasions, births, funerals, milestones. I'd seeded it with my own stock options in the first year, never asking for credit, and they used it to fund a party I wasn't invited to. 18 guests. No seat for me, no explanation, no accident. I stared out the window. Seattle was gray, smudged like a half-erased memory. The clouds hung low, as if the sky itself couldn't be bothered to lift its head. I didn't call back. I didn't cry. I just opened a new folder on my desktop: personal restructure. Some daughters wear their mother's perfume. I wore her indifference. The cursor blinked against the white of my presentation draft, its rhythm taunting, empty. The slide was perfect: bullet points, aligned data visualizations, animated the tone confident but not arrogant. It was ready for Friday's investor summit. Yet I sat there unmoved. My hand hovered over the trackpad, but my mind had drifted somewhere else: Tacoma 2004. The old house on South Ridgeview Lane with its creaky porch swing and windows that never quite shut right in spring. It smelled of gardenia candles and floor polish that never masked the damp under the rugs. That day was Kayla's 16th birthday. I had helped string up the pink and silver streamers before school. I vacuumed the carpet while our mother arranged cupcakes on a silver tier. When the guests arrived, classmates, cousins, even Coach Miller's daughter, I was told to stay near the door and help greet. Like an usher, like staff. They gave her a car, a convertible red as nail polish. Everyone clapped. Gerald, my father in name, more than presents, lifted a glass of sparkling cider and toasted her bright, promising future. He looked at me only once that day. "Alexis, could you open this?" he said, handing me a bottle of club soda. Tight cap. I didn't ask who paid for the car. I already knew the answer. That same year, I had won the National Science and Innovation Expo for my AI-driven traffic analysis system. My photo was in the local paper, but no one clipped it. When the principal called to congratulate my parents, Joanna responded, "Oh, that's lovely, but we don't want Kayla to feel like she's falling behind." I was told not to talk about it too much at home. At the party, a slideshow played on a large screen, Kayla's baby photos, first ballet recital, her volunteer day at the shelter. The final slide read, "We love you, Kayla, our shining star." I stood in the back, holding a tray of empty glasses. My name nowhere in the montage. "Don't stand there," like that one of my aunts whispered. "You're blocking the view." I stepped aside into the corner beside a ficus plant, pretending I didn't feel the heat behind my eyes. Back in the present, I clicked the slideshow window closed and shut the laptop. The office was still. My team had left hours ago. All that remained was the faint buzz of the floor lights and the sound of rain beginning to pelt the windows. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of memory crush against the calm veneer I'd built for myself. It wasn't neglect. It wasn't oversight. It was deliberate. They hadn't forgotten me. They had decided long ago where I belonged and where I didn't. I had been raised not to outshine Kayla, not to outgrow the role they assigned me, the helpful older sister, the serious one, the invisible one. Even when I earned a full scholarship, even when I graduated valedictorian, even when CoreLink reached its first million in revenue, Joanna once said, when I asked if she was proud of me, "Kayla needs the spotlight more than you do, Alexis. Be generous. You already have enough." Enough! I was a teenager washing dishes in a cocktail dress while my sister opened car keys wrapped in velvet. I was told to dim myself so she could shine. I was told brilliance was selfish if it made someone else feel small. But what about me? I looked out at the night again, the city lit up like someone else's birthday cake. My office reflected back my own silhouette, composed, tidy, alone. I didn't grow up in the shadows. They built the shadows and asked me to stay there. He introduced himself like he'd just joined. He didn't know who I really was. The Friday room was half full as always. A glass-walled chamber tucked into the northeast wing of CoreLink's open concept floor. It was a space where ideas either grew wings or died quietly under fluorescent lighting. I arrived early, like I always did. Laptop open notes, prepped coffee, cooling beside a silent tablet. My chair was at the head of the oval table, but that didn't mean anything to most. Power. Real power isn't always in the seating chart. The door hissed open with a breeze of outside chatter. "Hey," he said, walking in with the confidence of someone who didn't know what they were walking into. Gavin Holt, product marketing. His smile was easy, not smug. A navy shirt under a slate blazer. Just enough effort to suggest he'd read the company culture guide without taking it too seriously. I nodded once, not a flicker. A few more filtered in. Ray, from UX Dina, from legal, one of the interns who always wore headphones slung around her neck like a status badge. Gavin found a seat midway down, diagonally across from me. He looked around, eyes scanning the whiteboard, the mounted screens, the exposed pipework above. "My girlfriend told me this place had insane standards," he said, casually leaning toward Ray. "I like it. Feels deliberate." Ray chuckled. "Yeah, deliberate's one word." I didn't speak. The meeting began as usual. Dina started with compliance updates, Ray brought up interface feedback from the beta users, and then Gavin stood up. He had a printed slide deck. Printed! "We're still refining some messaging," he began, projecting enthusiasm. "But I thought we could consider reframing this campaign around user emotion, story first, product second, leaning into that whole why CoreLink narrative." He handed out the copies like a schoolteacher. His tone was crisp, clean, like someone who'd aced presentations in business school. He had no idea I'd built the tagline he wanted to reimagine. He had no idea I was the reason CoreLink even had a story worth telling. I waited until he was done. Then, I lifted the deck in front of me with 2 fingers barely a bend in my wrist. "Who's your target?" He blinked. "Millennials. Early Gen Z, tech forward. High trust in automation. What do they know about our tech stack?" "Well, not the back end, obviously, but we're assuming The don't assume. Silence. If you want to pitch a campaign, I said evenly, learn who you're pitching to, including me. That was when the room shifted. He hadn't blinked, but he didn't smile either. His posture softened, but not in defeat, more like recalibration. Like something inside him clicked, connecting dots too long scattered. He sat down slowly, lips pressing into a polite line. There was a rustle of awkward page flips and keyboard clicks as the meeting moved on. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. His pen stopped moving, his jaw twitched once. And in that moment, I knew something that Kayla hadn't warned him about me because she hadn't mentioned me at all. In Kayla's story, I didn't exist. Not as a CEO, not even as a sister. I finished the meeting 5 minutes early, my voice low but decisive as I assigned next steps and cleared the screen. Gavin gathered his papers noticeably slower than before. He opened his mouth like he might say something. Apology, curiosity, I couldn't tell. But I stood first, laptop in hand, already turning away. He didn't blink. But he didn't smile either. If you want to know someone, don't ask their family. Watch them lead a crisis. It started at 9:17 a.m. A flicker, a lag, then complete blackout across our client demo dashboards. The air changed instantly. Keyboards clicked louder. Voices sharpened, and someone from tech support sprinted past the glass wall like a fire alarm had gone off. In the connected room next door, screens blinked red, and warning tones echoed in staccato bursts. CoreLink's entire testing environment was down, and that was the exact moment Gavin walked in with a cup of chai. He froze halfway through the doorway, eyes darting from one monitor to the next. "Did I miss a fire drill?" "Nope," Ray muttered, already standing with her phone against her ear. "Real fire." "Digital edition?" The air smelled like stress, metallic, fast and rising. Developers were shouting over each other reboot attempts, cycling with error messages. A key client team was scheduled to preview our new rollout in less than 20 minutes, and right now, the product wouldn't even load. Gavin moved toward the operations desk, hesitated, then reached for his phone, probably to call a supervisor. "Don't bother," Ray said without looking. "She's already here." From the back hallway, Alexis stepped in. Not with a clipboard or phone in hand, but with rolled-up sleeves and a steady expression that made the noise around her dim. "Status," she asked. "Server stalled at 9:17. No recovery so far," the lead engineer stammered. "Backup node," Alexis asked. "Not kicking in." "Kill it," she said calmly. "Go back to root. Isolate block 4. The engineers hesitated. Alexis didn't. She moved straight to the central terminal, typed in credentials, faster than Gavin could probably recite his new email address, and began entering commands. Gavin looked stunned. "Wait! Is she—" "She's not delegating," Ray said with a shrug. "She's fixing it." Lines of code scrolled like falling water. Alexis didn't flinch, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with a rhythm born from long-forgotten sleepless nights. She paused only once, eyes narrowing, then input a script from memory, one she had written 3 years ago before her title said Chief. 17 minutes later, the room was silent again, except for the soft ping of systems rebooting. A technician whispered, "Back online. Refresh for client instance," Alexis said. Another ping. "Stable." Alexis stepped back, exhaled once, then turned to the group. "Document the error. Rewrite fallback. I want hourly logs for the next 3 days." Dismissed? No cheers, no applause. Just reverent silence, the kind you give to surgeons after an operation that shouldn't have succeeded. Gavin stood near the door, still holding his untouched chai. "She used to be an engineer." Ray gave him a sidelong glance. "No, she still is." He didn't say anything after that. He didn't need to. His posture shifted, more upright, less relaxed. Something behind his eyes changed. Not fear, not embarrassment. Recognition. Later that afternoon, while others debated campaign names and budgets, Gavin opened the internal directory. He typed executive leadership. There it was. Alexis Monroe. Chief Executive Officer, co-founder. He stared at the screen for a long time, not blinking. Then he opened his onboarding doc, scrolled to the page titled Leadership Observations, and hit delete. Line by line, he rewrote every assumption he had entered just a week earlier. He didn't tell anyone, but that night he rewrote his own onboarding memo. They brought candles, cutlery, champagne, but I brought the truth. The Sunview had been dressed for celebration. It always was. Every white tablecloth had been ironed to military precision. Every chair placed at measured angles. Warm light glowed from crystal sconces and flickered gently across champagne flutes filled just so. In the center of the private dining room, a round table bloomed with pale roses, glittering menus, and Joanna Monroe in a pearl-stitched jacket. The room held 18 guests. 17 of them belonged. One of them didn't speak yet. Gavin had arrived right on time, not early, not late. Kayla had met him near the entrance, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve and smoothing her dress as if arranging him for presentation. She introduced him to relatives as the one I told you about, and then busied herself with hosting duties, guiding conversations like a conductor with a flute of rosé. He sat quietly beside her, observing, taking in the cadence of a family rehearsed in their own mythology. The first toast came before the appetizers. Joanna raised her glass to family and to another decade of joy. Kayla beamed. Someone handed Gavin a champagne flute, but he only nodded. A few uncles talked real estate. An aunt recited a funny story from a high school bake sale. It was the kind of warmth that made outsiders feel polite, but peripheral. At one point, Kayla leaned over and whispered, "You okay? You're quiet." He gave her a small smile. "Just soaking it in." She laughed lightly. "Yeah, we're a lot, but good hearts, you know." The entrees arrived, plated, duck roasted beets and a salmon special Joanna had pre-ordered. Kayla took the chance to mention how she'd been helping Gavin look at marketing roles, slipping in references to his education, his ambition, and her intuition. She said it all with the cheerful energy of someone narrating a highlight reel. "She has the instinct of a recruiter," Gavin said softly enough to be gracious. Across the table, a silver-haired man in a forest green tie raised his voice just enough to slice through the low hum of conversation. "So, Gavin, what do you do exactly?" he asked. "Who do you work for?" Kayla reached for her water glass mid-sentence. Gavin smiled. "Calm, clear." "Alexis Monroe," he said. "She's my boss." Silence. A subtle, complete silence. One beat, two. Joanna's hand paused mid-air, her wine glass hovering just inches from her lips. She lowered it slowly. Kayla's face didn't move, but her eyes blinked once. Then again, from the corner of the room, a woman with tightly curled hair and a necklace shaped like a leaf gave a confused chuckle. "Wait?" "Alexis." As in your sister. Gavin turned his head toward her, his voice still low, still level. "Yes," he said. "The one you forgot to invite." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. The weight of the sentence hung in the air like a dropped chandelier, silent but shattering. Every spoon froze mid-bite. A candle flame flickered as if someone had exhaled too hard nearby. Someone dropped a fork against china, and it rang out too loud for comfort. Joanna straightened in her chair, smoothing her napkin without looking up. "That's not the point of tonight," she said faintly. Kayla's lips parted, searching for a script that didn't exist. But Gavin didn't add anything else. He simply took a sip from his untouched champagne and leaned back. He had brought no flowers, no card, no apologies, just a name and the truth behind it. It rang once, then again. The third time I picked up. I had just placed 2 slices of multigrain toast into the stainless steel toaster when my phone buzzed across the marble counter. A second buzz echoed before I even turned around. I let it vibrate against the stone, not moving, not blinking. Third buzz. Kayla. I stared at the name on screen like it was someone else's reflection in the window. Familiar but impossible. My finger hovered over the screen for half a second longer than it should have. Then I answered. "Alexis." Her voice was breathy, like she was trying to sound casual, but couldn't quite pull it off. "Hi." I didn't respond immediately. The kitchen was too still. Light spilled in from the east-facing windows, illuminating every cold surface my fridge door. The steel handles the edge of the knife block untouched. The whole apartment looked like it was designed never to feel lived in. And maybe that was the point? I just wanted to talk. About last night. The dinner. Still silent, I walked slowly toward the window. Phone pressed lightly to my ear. I didn't know, she rushed on. That you were the CEO. I mean, no one said it? You didn't either. You never asked? I said. She paused. I guess I didn't. There was a clinking sound in the background, maybe her bracelets, maybe a coffee mug. Something nervous, something out of rhythm. You know when Gavin told everyone? Her voice broke a little. I didn't even know how to react. You didn't react, I said, eyes still trained on the skyline. You stared, you blinked, and then you smiled like nothing happened. She exhaled. Was that wrong? You tell me? Alexis, she began. I didn't know you were this version of you. I laughed softly, not out of amusement, just tiredness. Then you weren't paying attention. Silence again. I remember when you were building that app in college, she said. Mom thought you were just playing with websites. I didn't understand it either. But now what? But now I see the building. I see the people. I see Gavin terrified to say the wrong thing. I see power. I felt the corners of my mouth twitch, not into a smile, but into something else. Maybe disbelief, maybe restraint. I didn't ask for power, Kayla, I said. I built something that worked. Power was the result. I didn't mean it badly. You rarely mean things badly, I said. And yet here we are. She didn't reply right away. I just thought maybe I could come by. You know, visit the office. I turned from the window, leaned on the edge of the counter. You're not a tourist. No, she said softly. I know that. Then what are you hoping to find? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe to understand. I inhaled slowly, glancing at the untouched toast now popped and cooled behind me. Gavin said, she hesitated. He said you didn't plan it, that you didn't tell him to say my sister's the boss. I didn't, I confirmed. But I built the kind of place where he could. That quieted her. The seconds ticked on. Then softly, Kayla asked, Can I visit? I let her words hang in the air like condensation on glass, fragile, fleeting, desperate to settle somewhere. I looked at the time. I looked at the calendar, and I remembered just for a second what it felt like to want to be seen even by someone who never really tried to look. Wednesday, I said. 3 p.m. A pause on the other end. Then I added, not unkindly, just firmly, not a minute late. No dear, no sorry. Just truth. The envelope wasn't branded. No logo, no return address, just my name written in sharp all-caps letters. It sat on the corner of my desk like it had always belonged there. Ray didn't say who had dropped it off. She just handed it to me with a neutral face and said, Someone requested it be delivered directly to you. I knew that handwriting. Bold strokes, slight tilt to the right, the kind of penmanship that never softened even with age. I peeled the flap open with my nail and unfolded the paper inside. It wasn't long, just a few sentences written in blue ink. I judged wrong. That's all I'll say. I stared at those words for a long time, not because they stunned me, but because they didn't. There was no, I'm sorry, no attempt to explain away the years, the remarks, the dismissals, just that single admission, an acknowledgement carved in Gerald Monroe's own hand. It said everything and nothing. I reread it slowly this time. There was something unshakable about that choice of words. Not I made a mistake or I misunderstood. No vulnerability, just judgment and wrongness. As if he were assessing a stock value, and for once, the numbers had outpaced him. My eyes dropped to the bottom line. Your name was never supposed to be bigger than mine. But it is. That was it. No date, no signature, but I didn't need one. The handwriting was enough. It had scrawled every chore list on our fridge growing up. Every graded test returned with a circled B and a frown. Every Christmas label that put Kayla first. I folded the letter and slid it into the small locking drawer beneath my keyboard. It landed next to the flash drive labeled Core Link Security Backup and a tarnished fountain pen I hadn't used since graduate school. I shut the drawer with a clean click and opened my inbox. 5 new emails, 2 flagged reports, a calendar reminder for the upcoming investor summit. I responded to them all, not because I wasn't shaken, but because I'd learned long ago that rage, when sharpened, becomes precision. And I had things to build. The next morning, I found myself reaching for the envelope again almost involuntarily. I read it one more time, this time aloud, each word releasing something I hadn't realized was coiled inside my chest. Gerald's silence had always been louder than any reprimand. When I brought home awards, he said, "That's nice." When I graduated early, he said, "Don't gloat." When I was accepted into Caltech, he offered no reaction, just handed me the tuition paperwork with a sigh. For a long time, I thought I wanted his love. But maybe I just wanted to be acknowledged as real, as present, as more than the overachieving mistake who made family gatherings too serious. This letter didn't heal anything, but it named the wound. That mattered. At CoreLink, I called an impromptu staff huddle. Nothing urgent, just wanted to thank the team. I stood at the head of the open-floor workspace, sunlight breaking across the concrete, and spoke plainly. "No innovation works without resilience," I said. "And none of us stand where we are by accident. It wasn't about the letter, but it was about me." Later that night, I drafted a message to Kayla. He sent me something. I hovered over the send button, then deleted it. Not yet. Some letters were meant to be private. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed them to know I was no longer waiting to be invited in. She didn't sign it, but the handwriting was unmistakable. No speech, no card, just a yellow square of quiet praise. It was almost 5 p.m. when I returned to my office. The hallway was quieter than usual, most employees either deep in their screens or preparing to leave. I pushed open the door and was greeted by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the golden light filtering through the half-drawn blinds. My laptop was right where I left it. Except now, something new was there. A yellow Post-it. No envelope, no fanfare. Just that familiar sticky square resting on the corner of my keyboard. I paused mid-step. I hadn't expected anything. It wasn't my birthday. No meetings had gone particularly well today. There was no reason for a note, and yet there it was, square-centered, intentional. I moved closer slowly. There was no salutation, no name, just 7 words in confident slanted handwriting. "Thanks for the map. Still following." My chest tightened, not out of discomfort, but something quieter, familiar, unexpected. I sat down slowly and read the words again. I didn't need to wonder who left it. The ink, the rhythm of the sentence, the minimalism, it had Gavin written all over it, even if it didn't say so. He hadn't said much since the last pitch meeting, just nodded at the right beats, absorbed the tempo of the room. I'd expected resistance. Instead, I got attentiveness. I ran my fingers along the edge of the note, letting the words settle deeper. Still following. It wasn't a compliment. It was a declaration, a choice. He was watching. And he had chosen my map. Behind me, a portion of the wall was covered with old photos, schematics, and a framed blueprint of CoreLink's original layout. It wasn't just decor, it was my history, my first real act of autonomy. I rose from my chair, Post-it in hand, and pinned it just beneath the blueprint, not in a center spot. Off to the left, quiet, steady, like the message itself. No flourish, no ceremony, just truth. I stepped back and stared at the board. It didn't change much visually, but emotionally, it shifted everything. Ray knocked once on the glass, then opened the door slightly. "They're heading out for drinks if you want to join." "I'm good," I replied. She nodded and left without pressing. The silence returned. A rare kind, not the heavy silence of being excluded or the shallow quiet of avoidance. This one had weight, like the space between words that matter. I thought back to the family birthday, The clinking of champagne glasses I wasn't invited to. The conversations where I was a footnote, if that. Gavin had gone there, heard them speak, watched the dynamics, and still. He came back, still following. What Kayla never said, what none of them ever asked, he understood in one sentence. It wasn't love. Not yet, but it was loyalty. And loyalty to someone who'd been denied it by blood was a deeper form of intimacy. I turned back to my screen. Deadlines loomed. Contracts needed final review. But I let my eyes drift just once more to that yellow square. I thought of what it meant to be seen without being asked, to be respected without needing to command it. And for once, I didn't feel alone in the room, even though no one else was there. There was no need to text him back. No thank you required. His words didn't demand a reply. They offered something quieter. A signal. A tether. Still following. And somehow, that felt like the loudest thing anyone had said to me in years. She didn't frame it. She just never took it down. She asked what I was eating, but never asked if I was okay. The living room hadn't changed much. The same beige carpet, the same oak shelves holding curated trinkets and family portraits, and that wide window facing the street where the hydrangeas bloomed too early every spring. Joanna sat on the edge of the couch, her cup of tea cooling between her palms, her gaze locked on a photo in her lap. It was a family portrait from 10 years ago. Christmas morning in front of the tree. Gerald stood tall in the back, Kayla beaming in red plaid pajamas at the front. Joanna remembered how long it took to get the shot just right. But now her eyes didn't linger on the smiles or the festive lights. They zeroed in on something she had missed for a decade: Alexis. Not completely absent, but nearly. She stood in the back row, slightly turned, her face half-shadowed by her father's shoulder. No one had meant to crop her out, but somehow she had ended up there anyway. Kayla entered quietly, holding a mug of her own. Her hair was pinned up her phone, buzzing, faintly in her hoodie pocket. She hesitated before sitting. "Mom?" she said. "Did you know Alexis runs the whole company?" Joanna didn't look up. I suspected. Kayla frowned. "But you never said anything." Joanna finally met her daughter's eyes. "You never did either." The silence between them thickened. The fireplace crackled with low embers, a leftover scent of cinnamon clinging to the air from the candle burning near the mantel. For years, this room had felt like the epicenter of family comfort tradition. But now it felt incomplete. "I thought she was just a manager." Kayla admitted, voice smaller than usual. "I didn't realize she built it." Joanna interrupted. Not with pride, but with a softness that sounded like regret. "You said Gavin works under her?" Kayla nodded, barely audible. "He didn't tell me at first." Joanna studied her face, the way her mouth tightened, the way her eyes avoided contact. "Did you ask him why?" Kayla opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I don't know." Joanna looked down at the photo again. "She's in this picture, but I don't remember what she said that day. I remember Kayla got the red boots. Gerald made his cranberry pie. But I don't remember Alexis." The weight of the words hung between them. Kayla shifted on the couch. "She never told us how hard she was working." "Did you ever ask?" Joanna's voice cut gently, but firmly. Joanna didn't say much after that. She reached for her glasses and set them gently on the coffee table, as if the act of seeing more clearly didn't require lenses anymore. "I used to think," she began after a long pause, "that she didn't need anything. Not help, not encouragement. She was so composed as a child. Always doing her homework early, fixing the remote, answering the door before I even heard the bell." Kayla stayed still. She wasn't used to seeing her mother like this. Quiet, still unsure. "I remember one time," Joanna continued, "she made a cake for my birthday. Must have been 10 or 11. It was lopsided and dense, and she'd spelled mom in lemon zest. I don't think I even tasted it." "You don't remember eating it?" "I remember telling her not to use the oven without asking first." Joanna exhaled slowly. She cleaned the whole kitchen afterward. Kayla's voice cracked. Did she ever bring it up? She never mentioned it again. The memory stung more than Joanna expected. It wasn't just about a cake. It was about how many gestures she had overlooked, how many quiet efforts had passed her by without so much as a thank you. It was the kind of realization that didn't come with fireworks, just a long, aching stillness. She probably thinks I don't care, Joanna said softly, that I chose Kayla over her. Kayla looked up startled. Did you? Joanna didn't answer. Outside, the streetlight flickered. The sun had dipped below the fir trees lining the block, and the light in the room was turning golden. Dust floated through the rays in thin, lazy spirals. She's never asked me for anything, Joanna whispered. Not once. Kayla swallowed hard. Maybe because she knew you'd say no. Joanna blinked. The answer struck a chord she didn't realize was waiting to be touched. She's always been self-made, Kayla added, but even self-made people deserve to be noticed. Joanna stood and walked toward the mantel where more pictures were arranged. Kayla at prom, Gerald with his fishing gear, a graduation photo from high school. All the frames were pristine, all carefully dusted. She reached for the photo she'd been holding, folded it gently, and slid it into the drawer beneath the table lamp. It wasn't a gesture of closure. It was storage, preservation, a beginning, perhaps, of trying to see Alexis not as the daughter who did fine on her own, but the daughter she never truly invited in. She didn't apologize, but she folded the picture, keeping for the first time a photo with Alexis in it. It's not forgiveness. It's just distance with better lighting. Seattle smelled like clean rain and quiet choices. The kind of place where stories didn't echo as loudly, where silence didn't need to be broken to mean something. I stood in my kitchen hands, wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, my eyes fixed on the pale gray stretch of Elliott Bay beyond the glass. The sky was low and woolly, the water flecked with fairy trails and quiet stillness. I hadn't said yes. I hadn't said no either. Just 3 words on the phone. You made it. The doorbell had rung exactly at 3. Gavin opened it, greeting Joanna and Kayla with a neutral smile and an offer of tea like he was hosting strangers in someone else's home, which in a way he was. Come in, he said softly, stepping aside. She's expecting you. The air inside my condo was crisp, modern, and impersonal. No photos lined the hallway, no signs of childhood nostalgia or family mementos. The living room was all clean angles and chrome edges, punctuated by shelves of technical books and architectural sketches. A lone frame certificate from MIT caught Joanna's eye. She always loved clean spaces, Joanna said mostly to herself. Gavin brought out a tray ceramic teapot, 3-cup slices of almond cake already plated. He arranged everything with quiet precision, then stepped back. I emerged a minute later. Black slacks, soft blouse hair tied back. Not a CEO's armor, but close enough. I didn't smile. You made it, I said. Joanna nodded. Kayla offered a tentative, thanks for letting us. I said nothing. I sat. They all did. The tea steamed gently between us. No one reached for it. The silence thickened and then settled like fog. Kayla glanced around the room, looking for anything to latch onto a photo. A knickknack, even a throw blanket that hinted at familiarity, but there was nothing. Just functionality, intelligence, and solitude. Joanna finally took a sip. You have a beautiful view? I gave a small nod. It's why I chose this place. A pause. Gavin, ever the diplomat, poured more tea. Let me know if anyone wants honey. No one did. We ate slowly, methodically. Every sound, the clink of a spoon, the swallow of tea felt like punctuation in a conversation that wasn't happening. I made no mention of the birthday. The invitation, the photo that never included me. I didn't need to. Joanna stood and walked toward the window. Her voice was soft but steady. You built all this. Without us. I see it now. I didn't respond. I just tightened my hand around the mug. No tremble, just quiet resolve. Kayla looked between us. She wanted someone to say something profound. A memory. A tear. Anything. But this wasn't that kind of gathering. The city stretched below us. Ferries moved like clockwork. Across the bay, the sun broke momentarily through the clouds, sending a shaft of light across the water's surface, like an answer that didn't need a question. Joanna turned back. I'm glad we came. I met her eyes, but didn't nod. Kayla opened her mouth, then closed it. They didn't stay long. No tour, no small talk, just a shared table, a shared silence, and a view none of us could deny. As Gavin walked them to the door, he offered his quiet smile again. Safe trip back. They left as they came together, but separate. I watched the door close. The room felt bigger now. I cleaned up slowly, placing each cup back onto the tray, rinsing them one by one in the stainless steel sink. The hum of the dishwasher masked the hush in my chest, but not completely. As I turned to the living room, my eyes paused on the table, where Kayla had rested her hand. Briefly, a hand that once held everything without knowing the weight of anything. The post-it Gavin had left still clung to the edge of my whiteboard. I'd stopped reading it days ago, but I hadn't taken it down. Thanks for the map. Still following. He hadn't said much today either, but he had brewed the tea, cleared the silence, and made space for what needed to unfold. In the hallway, I paused before a box I hadn't touched in months. It contained old photo albums, some with me, some without. I didn't open it. Not today. But my hand rested on the lid for a moment longer than necessary. Across town, Kayla sat in the passenger seat, staring out at unfamiliar roads. She clutched the mug Gavin had slipped into her hand, on their way out still warm, still fragrant with citrus. She didn't smile once, she said. Joanna gripped the steering wheel. She didn't have to. Back in the condo, I lit a candle sandalwood and pepper. Not to cleanse the air, but to mark the shift. There had been no forgiveness, no apology. Just a kind of presence. And presence sometimes was enough. I don't need an apology, I thought. Just the silence to mean something different this time. They built a family without me. So I built a company they couldn't enter. The air inside CoreLink's auditorium was charged, humming with the quiet electricity that precedes a moment people don't know they'll remember yet. Rows of seats filled quickly, investors, engineers, prospective partners, all dressed in conference casual, but watching the stage like something sacred might unfold. Second row center, left Joanna Monroe sat stiffly. Her navy blazer looked expensive, but unfamiliar, like she'd borrowed power rather than worn it. Kayla beside her clutched the event program with a grip too tight to be casual. Gavin had guided them in without much comment. Just a smile, a nod, and two reserved seats that no one else dared question. I didn't know it'd be this, Big Kayla whispered, eyes wide at the vaulted ceiling and giant CoreLink logo pulsing gently above the stage. Neither did I, Joanna murmured. But I did. Backstage, I adjusted the slim mic on my collar, my notes tucked neatly in a folder I wouldn't need. Ray stood beside me, tablet in hand, offering a small nod. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded once. This wasn't my first demo, but it was the first time my mother and sister would be watching. The lights dimmed, and the soft hum faded into silence. I stepped out onto the stage. No preamble, no theatrics, just me, my slides, and the work I'd built when no one was watching. "Welcome," I said into the mic, voice smooth, unwavering. "Let's talk about solving inefficiency, not with buzzwords, but with code." Behind me, the screen flared to life. Timelines, interface mockups, real-time data from our newest pilot with InvestMed Corp. I walked them through the architecture, the language stack, the customer metrics. I knew every number, every wireframe, because I had built the first one myself in an apartment with more ambition than furniture. I didn't look at Joanna or Kayla. They weren't why I was on that stage, but they were why this moment mattered. A few rows back, someone scribbled notes. Others nodded, impressed. The kind of nod that said, "I want to be on this rocket before it leaves orbit." The final slide appeared, Phase 3, Adaptive Systems plus Human Feedback Loop. Applause came slowly at first, then gathered strength. When I stepped off stage, Ray gave me a thumbs up. Gavin approached with two clients flanking him. "That was brilliant," one of them said. "How long have you been CEO?" I met his eyes and said, "From the very first wireframe." I saw Joanna freeze mid-step in the aisle. She had started toward me, maybe to say something, maybe just to get closer. But she didn't finish the walk. She stopped. She watched. And I turned toward the next hand, waiting to be shaken. Joanna's heels clicked once, then fell silent as she stood stranded between rows of gray seating and polished concrete. Around her, the conversation surged forward. Clients asking for onboarding details, analysts requesting early access to the SDK, two investors debating valuation with hushed urgency. None of it required her presence. None of it paused for her. Kayla sat frozen, unsure whether to follow her mother or sink lower into her seat. The auditorium didn't feel like a tech company anymore. It felt like a coliseum, and her sister was the one standing victorious in the center. Joanna slowly retreated a step and sat back down, lips pursed, hands folded tightly. Her eyes didn't leave me, though. They followed as I moved from one conversation to another, shaking hands, answering questions, confirming rollout schedules. No hesitation, no deflection. Gavin stood nearby, not interfering, not guiding, just present. "Did you know Joanna?" asked him, voice low. He didn't pretend not to understand. "She's been running this place for 8 years. She doesn't talk about it. She lives it." Joanna said nothing in response. Instead, she looked down at the program again. The name at the bottom of the final page, Alexis Monroe, founder and CEO. It had been there the whole time. Eventually, the crowd began to thin. People filtered out with brochures and excitement, chattering about integrations and pilot programs. The energy stayed behind like static in the carpet. Joanna stood again, slowly this time. "She didn't even glance our way," she said to Kayla, as though it explained something. "Would you have?" Kayla asked softly. They left without saying goodbye. Gavin watched them go from across the room, then quietly made his way back to the green room, where I sat alone, peeling the mic from my collar. "She stopped walking," he said gently. "I know," I replied, eyes on the empty stage. "She always does." Ray entered a moment later with a stack of signed contracts. "They want to lock in by Friday," she said. "Good," I said, standing. "Let's make it happen." I walked out of the room, past the corridor where Joanna had hesitated, past the space where my name was finally spoken aloud, in a room full of power, and not whispered, not mocked, not dismissed. Outside, the sky had cleared. It had rained earlier, but now the city gleamed with the kind of clarity that only follows a storm. They built a family without me, but they couldn't build what I did. And now they couldn't even walk into the room without feeling like they didn't belong. When you've been the golden child too long, even sunlight starts to burn. The rooftop bar glimmered beneath strands of Edison bulbs, casting warm halos over whiskey glasses and brushed steel railings. Downtown Seattle stretched beyond the edge, blurred by the soft haze of early summer. Gavin had suggested the spot as a casual wind-down. After the demo, just the team, a few investors, and whoever felt like celebrating. But beneath the polite laughter and clinking glasses, Kayla felt something else crackling. She had picked a seat too far from the center, next to a couple of analysts who barely glanced her way. Across the terrace, Alexis stood in quiet conversation with Ray and an exec from InvestMed. They leaned in when she spoke. They nodded. They laughed when she smiled. They didn't look at Kayla once. Kayla reached for her third glass of Pinot Grigio. "You'd think this was a tech funeral," she muttered. No one answered, so she got louder. "Seriously," she said, raising her glass halfway. "Do all high-performing women have to be allergic to joy?" Someone chuckled nervously. Kira, one of Alexis's product leads, tilted her head. Kayla went on. "I mean my sister Alexis. She always made everything so heavy, even birthdays." Gavin, who had been checking his phone nearby, turned slightly. His eyes narrowed. "Maybe that's how she built something worth showing," he said evenly. Kayla barked a laugh. "Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're scared of her too." Kira's voice cut through the buzz. "We're not scared. We're grateful." That landed like a slap. Kayla's smile wavered. "Okay." That was dramatic. Gavin stepped closer, expression unreadable. "You joke about shadows," he said quietly, "but you've never stepped into the light yourself." The group went silent. Kayla set her drink down too fast. It sloshed. She didn't pick it back up. One by one, the team drifted away toward Alexis, toward comfort, toward the real celebration. Kayla sat alone, the pinpricks of string lights suddenly harsh. No one came to ask if she was okay. The music pulsed low, jazzy, elegant, but to Kayla it was just background noise behind the sound of her own thoughts spinning out. She shifted in her seat, fingers tightening around the napkin in her lap. Somewhere between the second drink and that final comment, the atmosphere had shifted. She hadn't intended to ruin anything. Not really. She had only wanted to feel seen. Growing up, it had always been easy. A smile, a story, a soft word in front of guests. Kayla had mastered the Monroe brand of likability. Her mother praised it. Her father ignored everything else. Teachers adored her. Friends clung to her. She didn't need top grades or hard skills, she had charm. But charm didn't work here. Not in this rooftop of code slingers, venture capitalists, and quiet reverence for a sister who had somehow outgrown the entire family without saying a word. Not when her boyfriend barely looked at her, now standing across the floor with arms folded and head bowed as he talked to Ray. She wiped at her eyes, but nothing had spilled. That would have made it easier. If she cried, someone might have rushed over, hugged her, told her Alexis was being a bit much. But there were no hugs here, only space. A server came by offering more wine. She declined. Kira passed again on her way back from the restroom. Their eyes met briefly. No malice, no pity, just understanding. Kayla wanted to scream. Instead, she pulled out her phone and texted Gavin. "Can we talk?" No reply. She sent another, "I didn't mean to say that." Still, nothing. So she stared out into the night sky, dotted with cranes and glass towers, reflecting the last of twilight. This city didn't sleep, and tonight, neither would she. Hours passed. She barely noticed. When she finally rose to leave, she didn't say goodbye. She walked past the glass doors, through the elevator, down to the street where taxis glided silently by. As she waited for one to stop, she looked at her reflection in the blackened window of a closed boutique. Her makeup was perfect, her mask intact, but inside something had cracked. And for the first time in her life, Kayla didn't know how to fix it. It wasn't the door that changed. It was what my name finally meant. Monday morning in South Lake Union arrived crisp and pale, with a chill that hummed low through the air like a held breath. Seattle's skyline stretched behind the new CoreLink building, a sculpture of glass and brushed steel still gleaming with the smell of fresh paint and ambition. But my attention wasn't on the building's height or width. It was on the plaque. Mounted beside the south-facing entrance, it was only 6 inches tall. Brass, matte finished, carved in sans serif. But it spoke louder than anything I'd said to my family in years. Alexis Monroe, innovation. Wing, no marketing slogan, no quote. Just the name they once called too intense, too much, too cold, now permanently bolted into a wall taller than any apology. Joanna stood in front of it with her shoulders tucked in. Her hands clutched a handbag, too small for the occasion, and her fingers, pale and deliberate, kept brushing the seam as if she couldn't decide whether to reach for the plaque or step away from it. Her reflection hovered faintly in the building's glass. And layered behind it, mine. Inside, Gavin was orchestrating quiet order. No streamers, no speeches. Just trays of coffee ID lanyards, printed for the press, and a few engineers in smart jackets trying to look relaxed. The room pulsed with understated pride, the kind that doesn't need applause to feel real. Joanna didn't greet anyone. She didn't smile. But she showed up. I walked to her without fanfare. "You really did all this?" she asked. Her voice was quiet but not condescending. Not anymore. She wasn't doubting me. She just didn't know where to place herself in a world that I'd built entirely without her. I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "I endured all that. Then built this." We stepped through the glass doors together, but the distance between us remained not hostile, just defined. The interior hummed with soft light and data. A living wall of server activity danced across the lobby screens. Pastel renderings of design patents lined one hallway. Another showcased hand-signed partnership contracts beneath spotlighted frames. Gavin guided people quietly through the space, while Ray reset name cards near the prototype station. Joanna wandered behind me like she was tracing the outline of a painting. She stopped in front of a wall-sized photo. Our original six-person team, slouched in mismatched chairs, whiteboard chaos behind us. I was at the center marker, raised mid-sentence, a fire in my eyes no one else had noticed then. She looked at it longer than I expected. "This is yours," she said softly. I let the silence carry it. We reached the east wing. My wing, past the fiber optic display and solar prototype lab, a panoramic window stretched wide, framing the bay in soft gray. Joanna stepped toward it, palms flat on the railing, eyes damp. "I'm glad I lived long enough to see this," she said. That was all. No apologies. No explanations. Just presence. I could have told her how long I waited for this moment. How many nights I stared at ceilings wondering if she'd ever ask to see my work. But it wasn't necessary. She saw it now. As the guests began to leave and sunlight slanted lower across the floor, I found myself alone near the stairwell. From there, I could see it all, the heartbeat of something I'd birthed from nothing, without permission, without applause. And just before heading back to my office, I turned to face the plaque one last time. It wasn't revenge. It was remembering who I was all along. I waited for years for that one card. It never came, so I wrote my own. The rain was soft that evening, a quiet tap against the windows of my apartment, like someone hesitant to come in. Seattle always had a way of matching the mood without trying. Outside, the sky stretched pale and bruised. Inside, I sat on the floor back against the couch, a thick envelope resting on my knees. Not addressed, not stamped, not meant to go anywhere. The letter began with no real ceremony. "Dear me, at 15, I know you didn't cry, but I did for you." The pen trembled only once. I kept the rest of the handwriting steady. "You tried too hard, I remember that. You thought if you made straight A's, won enough awards, smiled at the right moments. Maybe then someone would remember your birthday without needing a reminder. But they didn't. And you learned to stop expecting the cake, or the candles, or the card that said, 'We're proud.' What you didn't learn, not until much later, was that none of it was your fault." I paused, listening to the low hum of the dishwasher, the occasional crack of thunder in the distance. Then continued. "You were never too much. You were just never enough for them. But you are for me." I folded the letter, creasing the paper carefully once, twice, then slid it into the glass bottle I had used once to store pebbles from a tech conference in Lisbon. The cork still fit. I stood up, walked to the small balcony, and placed it there, tucked behind a ceramic plant pot, safe but visible. Not buried, just shelved. The gift I never received, I had finally given to myself. Across town, Kayla sat in a budget hotel, her third night alone. The wallpaper was floral and peeling at the corners. The desk lamp flickered occasionally, and the bed creaked if she shifted too fast. But she was still. In front of her, a blank sheet of paper had been rewritten 3 times. The first attempt had started with, "Hey." The second with, "Do you remember?" And then scratched out. The third began simply, "I'm sorry for everything." She hesitated, then wrote another line. "You shouldn't have had to carry it all." She looked at the paper for a long time after that, then folded it. She didn't seal it. She didn't even look for an envelope. Instead, she laid it gently on the nightstand and sat back as if the act of writing had taken something from her and given something back. Later that night, scrolling her phone without purpose, her thumb paused on a news headline from Techstar Daily. CoreLink's Alexis Monroe, honored for breakthrough innovation in AI ethics. Kayla didn't click the link. She just stared at the image. Her sister stood in front of a podium, no smile, but with eyes that seemed whole. Kayla whispered to no one, "There you are." She didn't send the letter, but for the first time, she didn't feel the need to. And for the first time in her life, she smiled when she saw Alexis's name. They drew a line between us. So I built a bridge they couldn't cross. The room was full. Rows of chairs lined the CoreLink hall, now repurposed for something far beyond tech. Cameramen hovered near the edges, wires coiled neatly, and soft lighting swept across the stage. My heels echoed as I stepped up, notes folded once in my hand, though I wouldn't need them. I looked out into the crowd, engineers, journalists, former mentors, and investors. And one person sitting 2 rows in not blinking hands clutched tight Joanna Monroe. I didn't greet her. I didn't even glance too long. "Good evening," I began, my voice carrying clearly across the mic. "I'm not here to pitch a product. I'm here to honor a truth. There are girls who grow up never being believed. Not in their dreams, not in their logic, not in their fire. They are told they're too quiet to lead, too intense to be loved, too bold to belong. And still, some of us find a way." I paused. Today, I'm proud to announce the launch of the Joanna Monroe STEM Fund, a scholarship for young women pursuing degrees in engineering, computer science, and applied AI. It bears her name. There was a shift in the crowd, a rustle of approval, a quiet glance toward Joanna. "But make no mistake," I continued, eyes steady. "It was founded by me, Alexis Monroe." I held their attention in the stillness. "This is not about reconciliation. This is about recognition. Not for the mother who doubted me, but for the girl I used to be who deserved someone in her corner. Today, I become that someone for the next in line." The applause was soft at first, then built into something real. I didn't smile. I didn't bow. I only said clearly, "We don't need revenge. We need records. And I'm writing mine now." From the corner of my eye, I saw Gavin place his hand lightly on Joanna's shoulder. She stood up slowly, and the spotlight caught her face, tear-streaked, quiet, not broken, but changed. For once, she had no words. She only looked up at me, not as a daughter, as a fact. The clapping faded. I stepped off the stage and walked forward. Not toward her, not toward anyone. There was a row of chairs near the front and one in the middle left empty, on purpose. Gavin had arranged the seating. I'd approved the diagram. I walked past the row, the lights, the glances, and sat 2 seats away. Joanna didn't move. She didn't reach out. The silence between us was no longer made of ice. It was made of ink. That chair between us, not a barrier. A punctuation mark. A full stop. I never needed their applause, just a moment where I stopped shrinking to fit their silence. If you've ever been overlooked or left behind, know this. Your worth isn't defined by the rooms you're excluded from. It's built in the ones you create for yourself. I hope my story reminded you that boundaries don't protect love, they expose it. Leave a comment if you've ever reclaimed your voice after being silenced. And if you haven't yet, let today be the first word in your rewrite. Choose yourself. Stand tall, even if no one claps. Walk in like the world's been waiting.